So we finally have a paddle utilizing actual titanium. The new Selkirk 007 is a more power-centric paddle with some unique properties. So without further ado, let's dig straight into it. The Selkirk Labs 007 is $333 with a hard case and $300 with a soft case, and you can use my Selkirk specific code INF-STS PICKLEBALL, which will give you a $40 digital gift card to use on a future purchase. As always, all useful links can be found in the description down below. Okay, let's talk about Selkirk's new Infinigrit, which Selkirk is saying lasts 3 times longer than traditional raw carbon fiber paddles. When I first was analyzing this, I figured they meant 3 times longer than their original spray-on grit for the edgeless paddles, but they do actually mean 3 times longer than raw carbon fiber, which is a pretty bold claim. I've been putting these paddles through their paces in tons of drill sessions with my Titan ball machine, and I have to say, the face on both of these paddles still feels extremely gritty. Even when I first picked up these paddles and ran my finger across the surface, I noticed that the grit does feel more substantial. It feels a little different than their normal spray-on grit found on the Lux paddle, for instance. It feels harder to me, like it's really part of the surface rather than just some extra grit that was placed on top. So that's definitely a good sign. The next differentiator for the 007 is the titanium mesh layer, which Selkirk placed between the polypropylene core and the carbon fiber face of the paddle. They did confirm that the titanium mesh layer is made with actual titanium, which is pretty cool because titanium up until this point hasn't actually been utilized in any other paddle. All the other paddles are saying they are utilizing titanium are actually using polyester with a shiny titanium colored thread, essentially, which again isn't ultimately bad, it just provides a different feel off the face. But Selkirk is saying they are utilizing actual titanium in this layer, and it does give the 007 a very unique feel off the face. The last change they made here is the new design of the aerodynamic hole in the face of the 007, which is now sharper and more refined. Selkirk is saying this new hole design creates less drag than the previous design, but I didn't notice a huge difference, but ultimately I have to say it does look really nice. Here's the metric breakdown for the 14mm 007 Invicta shape, with notables being the swing weight of 123.8, which is pretty darn high, the twist weight of 6.08, which I would say is slightly above average for an edgeless paddle, and a balance point of 24.5 centimeters. And here we have the metric breakdown for the 10mm 007 Epic shape, with notables being the swing weight of 105.2, twist weight of 5.76, and a balance point of 23.6 centimeters. These numbers are really solid on the 10mm version. I will say the 10mm 007 is my preferred version, not only due to the pop you get off the face, but with that low of a stock swing weight, you have tons of room to play around with different lead tape setups and raise the twist weight even higher. I find that the 14mm version just gets too head heavy with added lead. So if you don't care to customize much and prefer something on the higher end of swing weight these days, the 14mm might be a great option for you. So the spin on these paddles is really good. The 14mm 007 Invicta came in at 2173 RPM, and the 10mm 007 Epic came in at 2246 RPM, which are very solid numbers. I went back through my previous results of Selkirk paddles that I've tested in the past, and the 10mm 007 Epic is now the highest spinning Selkirk paddle available. So as far as performance in the spin category, they land on the higher end for sure, and the 10mm Epic is one of the highest spinning paddles I've ever tested. I noticed really solid dip over the net and on drives and serves, and again, I've been putting these paddles to the test over the last couple months, ripping drive after drive after drive on my Titan ball machine, and I just really haven't noticed much loss of spin, which is really nice to see. Because if this had traditional spray-on grit, that would be a different story. The very last thing that I will say here is that you can certainly get relative spin for a better price. So you are definitely paying to be a part of Selkirk Labs as an early adopter of these new paddles. Okay, let's talk about power and pop. The 14mm 007 Invicta receives an 8.6 for power and an 8.9 for pop, and the 10mm 007 Epic receives an 8.8 for power and a 9.2 for pop. The 10mm version is my personal personal favorite of the two, not only for the higher spin rate, but because it feels so fun to play with that low swing weight and the super poppy and powerful nature off the face. The only drawback to the 10mm version is it is a bit jarring off the face. I did find that lead tape helped with this, but it is jarring and pretty rigid when you make contact with the ball. So if you're someone with a tennis elbow or someone prone to being sensitive to vibration, I would pass on honestly both of these paddles. For me, it didn't bother me too much and didn't really bother me at all with lead tape on it especially, but I'm not personally prone to being off-put by vibration. Putaways and hand battles with the 10mm were quick and agile while having the power and pop I want to put balls away and keep pressure on my opponents. It's definitely a very fun paddle to play with overall. As far as sweet spot goes, I mean, these are edgeless paddles, so which they're always going to suffer in the sweet spot category. I will say these suffer slightly less than your average edgeless paddle, which I believe is mainly due to that titanium infused reinforcement inside of the paddle underneath the paddle's face, but they still don't compete with paddles with an edge guard. The 14mm 007 Invicta comes in at an 8.4 out of 10, and the 10mm 007 Epic comes in at an 8.6 out of 10. And keep in mind, there isn't really much, if any, room for lead tape with the 14mm version, whereas the 10mm Epic can be boosted closer to a 9 out of 10 with lead. And lastly, let's talk about control. The 14mm had slightly better control, I would say overall, but it does suffer from a tighter sweet spot and less spin. So the 14mm 007 Invicta comes in at an 8.7 out of 10, and the 10mm 007 Epic comes in at an 8.5 out of 10, mainly due to it being more poppy off the face, which can yield more pop-ups on dinks and can make some drops and resets harder to gauge. And that is really ultimately just going to come down to the thickness of the paddle. Of course, a 14mm in the Epic shape will have more control than the 10mm in the Epic shape. The 14mm in the Invicta shape will have more control than the 10mm in the Invicta shape. But if you're looking for the most control out of all four options available, that would be the 14mm Epic. That will have the the best control out of the four options available. I will say that overall, these are a major improvement over the majority of Selkirk's lineup. They are trying to utilize new tech to address a lot of the issues the community has been rather annoyed with for a while now. Infinigrit seems to be a solid answer to the issues of durability with spray-on grit, and they are utilizing actual titanium in a reinforcement layer to help create a more unique feeling paddle with a larger sweet spot in the edgeless category. It's honestly pretty nice to see the larger companies finally utilizing their resources to bring new things to the market like this, so honestly, props to Selkirk for that for sure. Click here if you want to check out the ball machine that has been leveling up my game like crazy this year. Subscribe to always be in the know, and have a freaking wonderful day. Peace.